Welcome to Failing Forward. This show is all about the other side of success. We talk to entrepreneurs, leaders, and innovators who aren't afraid to share the mistakes they've made. Because if there's one thing I know for sure, it's this. Every setback is just a setup for something bigger, if you're willing to learn from it. All right. Welcome back for another episode of Failing Forward. Today we've got our first banker.
First of many.
First of many bankers.
Very exciting stuff.
Yeah.
We love the bankers.
But someone that, if you're doing business in Youngstown, if you're active in this community, you see Sam everywhere. Whether it's community involvement, sitting on boards, participating in discussions that are moving the valley forward, helping raise money for nonprofits, helping with the economic development initiatives that are happening in this community. My man Sam Huston from Huntington National Bank is all over the place here in Youngstown, and we're lucky to have him with us on the pod today.
Thanks for that. I'm looking forward to this.
We're going to have some fun.
Of course.
We're not going to talk a whole lot about banking because I don't think anybody wants to listen to banking and accounting conversations. So we're going to talk a little bit more about, family business and leadership and community initiatives and all the things that you're doing and you're proud of. So we're going to start off by having a little conversation, get a little bit of backstory about the family business dynamic that's helped make who you are today. Yeah. I mean, many of the people in our valley know you as a regional president of Huntington National Bank and board member and community activist and all these other things. But there's quite a bit more to this story in terms of how you became who you are today as this leader that a lot of people love to follow and just love being a part of our community. So you mentioned, early on in your career, deciding to step away from a family business was a huge decision. Yeah. In your part, and would love to jump into that a little bit and give us a little bit of backstory about what happened and what led you to making that decision.
Yeah, well, how about we start? I'll even start a little earlier just to set the stage. So, I growing up, from a very young age. So my dad was actually a truck driver when I was probably clear up to about 12 years old, actually. So he grew up hauling steel. So he was very impacted by everything that happened with the steel industry. And so what I would tell you is, being a truck driver in the early 80s was not necessarily the most profitable business. So, I always tell people, like, growing up, we always had what we needed, but you didn't have the extras, right? And so, at a certain point in time, my dad and my grandparents actually decided to start a business. And it was what started us in business was actually a product that my great-grandfather had patented. And so, it was an opportunity to manufacture it. Mm-hmm. And so, not knowing a whole lot about manufacturing, you think about taking a leap of faith. I mean, my grandparents and my parents took an enormous leap of faith to start the business. And so, thinking about, leveraging all the things that they had to do to get a business off the ground, and they did it the hard way. It was, using credit cards, using home equity lines of credit, whatever it took to get the business rolling. And so that was about, I would say I started working in the business when I was 15 years old. Mm-hmm. So as many people that are in family businesses will tell you that, when you start and you grow up in a family business, you really do it's ingrained in you that is your future. Yeah. And, it was hard work. It was very hard work. It was long days. I always make the joke that my parents weren't big sports peoples, but they were really, really good at work, and that was a lot of what we, work ethic was very ingrained from a very young age. I've had the pleasure of listening to some of your past podcasts, and I think about my first job. My first job was 10 years old. I was working in my uncle's garage, cleaning tools and dumping oil and doing all those kind of things. And but it came from just, if you want a little extra spending money, you had to figure it out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what was the business, the family business?
It was, we were in plastic manufacturing.
Okay.
So we did a little bit of rotational molding and a little bit of extrusion molding. So
we know a little bit about that.
One of my favorite questions to ask potential candidates at any of our businesses is, what did your parents do for a living? Because there's something to be said about those that were raised in an entrepreneurial environment. Yeah. And not to say that, kids that grow up with two teachers or two union workers or this, that, or the other turn out to be something. But, there's just a better understanding of what it truly takes, like that grit, that grind, that ability to kind of take a leap of faith. Because even if you're an employee and you're not self-employed, the best things happen when you can find that semblance of like blind trust to say, you know, I trust Sam, I trust his leadership, I trust the things that he's all about, and I'm going to go all in and follow him, knowing that it may not be perfect and there may be this, that, or the other thing that goes wrong along the way, but like we still believe in the mission and the person that I'm following, as opposed to, you know, the people that are raised in that environment where there's so much structure and it's 9 to 5 and you clock out and you clock out. Right? Like your parents didn't clock out.
No.
I'm assuming your grandparents didn't clock out.
There was no clocking out, honestly. I remember
how many hours did they pay you for it?
Right, clock out. This is before all those laws. Well, come on. No, I mean, I remember, you know, coming home from school, you get off, you know, we lived out in the country, so the school bus road was a little bit longer than usual. And so we would get off about 3:30 in the afternoon. You got a half an hour, you better like shovel down whatever resemblance of lunch and dinner that you wanted to have because you were going to work. And, you know, we'd work till 8, 9, 10 o'clock sometimes. Sometimes if we were even busier, it'd be later than that. I can remember a few times being out till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, welding on a piece of equipment or something like that. And so when you're in a family business, you do what you have to do and you work till the work is done. And, you know, you pay everybody else first.
That's right. Yeah, you eat last. And that's the part that's not always easy for everybody to kind of be comfortable with. But I mean, you can tell though, when you're interacting with people, and I'm sure you see this in your world as well, is there are the people that are comfortable with that, and there are the people that haven't figured out that that's what they're going to need to do yet.
Sure.
Right? I mean, there are people, like I see the level of work that you put in, and you never stop, man. I mean, you are working all the time. I've seen emails from you at all hours.
The perception's good then, right?
Yeah, the perception is at least there, right? So, you know, getting people to get into that kind of mentality is like, you don't want the expectation that you have to work 7 days a week when you come and work for me, but you have to understand urgency. Right, like the fundamental understanding of urgency when it comes to being around family business and being an entrepreneur, I think is the biggest difference. Because for those that don't understand, you clock out today, it'll be there tomorrow, I'm going to worry about it tomorrow. For those that do understand, it's like, no, this is a problem we need to deal with right now.
Yeah.
And I'm going to stay here and I'm going to put my nose to the grindstone for as long as it takes to get it figured out, because there's a customer that's waiting for this. That customer may be a school system. That customer may be a hospital. That customer may be something that really needs this. And the longer you take, everything else kind of trickles down and ultimately impacts a lot of people.
Absolutely.
So speaking of impacting a lot of people, who got you started in regards to your drive for making an impact? Because I see the impact you make in our community. I see the boards that you're on. I see the level of involvement that you're in. And I see a lot of people that are on boards just to be on boards.
Yeah.
Right? They're on boards so it looks good on their resume, or so it looks good to their boss, or this, that, or the other. But you're one of those people on those boards that I've interacted with that you're engaged, you're asking questions, you're stepping up and volunteering for this, that, or the other committee. How did that happen? How did that get started for you? What was the thing that kind of like drove you to be that active in this community?
Yeah, so believe it or not, I mean, even when, you know, I was in the business, you know, there weren't a lot of opportunities to do that kind of stuff and volunteer and get involved in different things because, again, you were just always working at the business. Yep. It really wasn't until I actually got into banking where I had that opportunity to start to volunteer for things. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you start to see, I mean, you guys know, you're involved in things as well. You start to see the impact that you actually have on people's lives. And that's really when I started to realize that, you know, impact is probably one of my own core values that I know that's important to me, that you have to have impact, whether it's what I do at work, what I'm doing with raising kids, or, you know, volunteering and serving on boards. And I think, you know, what I've seen over the years is I've had so many opportunities because I work for an organization that is very supportive of getting involved in volunteering, and that doesn't happen everywhere. Not all companies are created equally that way. And I'm very fortunate in that sense. And then, you know, as you continue to establish yourself in the role that you're in, and you spend more time in the market interacting with people, and you see the things that are going on, because sometimes there's a lot of things that people don't even realize are happening right here in Youngstown, and you get access through networking and talking with people, and you start to see where there's areas where things just very much align with what's important to me. The reason that I do a lot of the things that I do as it relates to boards and volunteering is because I believe that our kids are extremely important. I believe that we want to keep them here, as many of them as we can, and provide them great jobs and places to live and places to go have fun and enjoy life, And so for me, when I think about, impact, like those are the things that I want to be involved with.
Yep.
It's funny too. I mean, we talk about the core values in our organization all the time. The things that you live, the things that we talk about, how we incentivize our employees, but we don't do that. I've never done that personally, right? To go back and say, hey, maybe I need to understand my true core values and how I align, who I am around. I mean, it's not as introspective at a personal level as it is professionally, right?
Yeah.
It's cool that you can have that opportunity to see that.
Well, I mean, if you really stop and think about it, I guess how I look at it is it doesn't matter if it's, if it's parenting, if it's my job or what have you, volunteering, if you can't make an impact, like if you don't feel like you can bring value and, leave it in a better place than you found it, then why are you doing it?
Yeah.
Like, why are you investing that time? And it's a rule that I just kind of live by as I think about where I spend my time volunteering, how I spend my personal time with my family. All of those things, play into that of just what's the impact.
Yeah. And it's a gift to be able to say that, right? And that's the thing that I think I get the most frustrated with is when I see people that misuse that gift or don't appreciate it, because there's a large percentage of the population in the United States and the world period that doesn't have a choice. They have to go to work at a job that they hate. Yeah. They have to go do something that they don't enjoy because of whatever other things that are happening in their world, whether that was generational poverty, whether that was circumstances that were beyond their control, whether that was family, generations of family before them that led them to a certain belief in what our world had to offer. So when I see people that are in a position to make an impact and actively choose not to, or even worse, they occupy space for others that could.
Yeah.
Right? That's one of the more frustrating things, right? Is that you're in a position to help, you're sitting on a board, you're not active in those conversations, you're not helping, and there could be someone else there that wants to make a difference and has the time to actually help. So one question kind of back on the line of the family business thing is, I know that there is a tremendous amount of pressure in family business. Right? And we talk about this all the time when we're kind of working with people in that succession planning conversation, and they're figuring out, like, to your point, you're raised early on to believe that you're going to have to take the keys to this, right?
Absolutely.
And it's not even so much so you get the opportunity to take the keys to this. It's like, hey, you're the one that's going to have to take this on. And then it puts you in a position where you feel like you don't have a choice.
The obligation.
Right.
Right.
It's this obligation of continuing this family business. And, it's always an interesting conversation with the original owners or whoever to say, well, maybe the kids don't want this. Yeah. Right? Maybe it's best to just sell the darn thing rather than burden your children with this pressure of, well, if it fails, it's not just a regular failure. Like, a regular failure is one that's on you, but if you fail in the family business, you're letting down your parents, you're letting down your grandparents, everyone around you, and people don't understand how much pressure that is.
Yeah.
Right? So when you decided to walk away from that, was that hard for them to accept that it was not something that you were as passionate about?
Yeah, no, there were some circumstances that, kind of surrounded that. In full disclosure, like, I wanted to be an architect was actually what I wanted to be. I was convinced from 8th grade that that's what I wanted to do.
From 8th grade?
From 8th grade.
All right,
I'm
going to dig deep.
Loved building houses.
You're a man of many talents.
Yeah,
I don't know how long we have on the podcast, but we don't have enough time. I do know that.
But I will tell you, I always enjoyed working in the business. Got to do a lot of fun things. I learned so much in that business, from doing the grunt work of sweeping the floors and, greasing machines and learning to weld and learning to machine and learning how to interact with, the end user and customer at trade shows, to doing payroll and negotiating insurance. You name all the things that a business owner has to do. I learned so much in that. So I will forever be grateful for that experience. There were a couple set of circumstances that really ultimately drove my decision to leave the business. And one of it was really timing in life. I had gotten married. I had 2 young kids. My second one was on the way about this time that I was really starting to contemplate if this was the move I needed to make or not. 9/11 happened. And things like an event like that, or take even what transpired with COVID, we know the impact that those things have on our business and economy. And so it got really slow. It got really tight for quite a period of time. You heard me say earlier that, we made sure that we paid everybody else before we paid ourselves. But here I am, newly married, second kid on the way, had just built a house. And so I started to really worry of whether or not this was going to be a sustainable future for me.
Yeah, you can't feed those kids purchase orders.
No, that's pretty short-sighted at 23 years old. I can look back on that and say, had I hung in there and maybe done some things differently, who knows where the path would have led me,
being
right?
able to play the long game, again, is a luxury.
Sure,
right?
Sure, especially in business.
Yeah. It is
So,
undoubtedly a luxury.
And you brought up something that was really interesting about, the conversations today, because we also have those conversations with business owners about succession planning. And isn't it interesting how those conversations have changed over the years? People are realizing, hey, maybe the kids don't want to run the business.
Yep.
And that's really changed the dynamic. And that's been a generational shift that has not happened all that long ago. I think to your point, growing up in kind of call it the era that I grew up in, I mean, it was expected. And, through some things that transpired is ultimately how I decided to make that decision. Really out of, if I can be honest, I'd say it was out of panic at that moment.
Yep.
I think I'd gone 6-7 weeks without a paycheck. And so I started doing some, same thing like we talked about earlier about just, figuring out how to make a few bucks,
Yep.
And doing some side jobs and things like that. Whatever it took to support my family was kind of where my head was at that point. And so, while it was a really difficult decision to make, and, to your kind of earlier point, the parents and the grandparents, it's either, they wanted to be supportive, but they also recognized what my impact on that business was
losing a workhorse for sure. I mean, if I know,
Well,
I know how hard you work.
No, it was. I mean, and they had, it wasn't so much that. I mean, it was just that was where my mind was at the time. Was I knew, and it weighed very, very heavy on my mind. Even to this day, it probably still carry a little guilt around that piece of it of just.
Well, it could have been worse though, too, right? I mean, you think about the opposite. The thing that people don't talk about is just at least you had what it takes, right? And they wanted you to be there. It could have been like, there's no way he could do this. I feel like that's worst case scenario. That'd be the biggest cuts the deepest, right?
The thing about it is at that point in time, I mean, knowing that, and even when I took my first job, which I know we'll probably talk about at some point here in banking, but I continued to work for the business as well. I mean, I was, I had some of the skills needed, like to look at engineering drawings and things like that, or to, help fix a machine that maybe nobody else quite knew how to fix, right? And so, some days where I come home from work, jump out of the suit, jump in, some work clothes and go work for a little bit. And I did that for a period of time, but it was, there were just some really, really long days there. But I had, had the opportunity to get into banking, didn't get hired the first time. They passed on me, and then later, got hired. So I don't know if you guys want to go into that at this point, or
Same.
So that's kind of like the direction that we're looking at here is, okay, we've gone through the family business conversation. I do want to, before we get into banking a little bit, I want to pull on the string a little bit on the architect conversation, because this makes a lot of sense now that it's come out. So in 8th grade, you wanted to be an architect, all right? And right around the same time, 9th grade, I wanted to be Jerry Maguire, right? So I didn't end up becoming Jerry Maguire in a lot of different ways. But so what happened there? You wanted to be an architect. Did you go to school for that? How did that ultimately change from something that you were passionate about as a young adult? Because I think about that. We talk about kids and our impact and how that
Yeah.
creates who we are. And I think I want my children to have the opportunity to find something that they love and then pursue it. And so, what happened along the way between eighth grade to being involved in the business that architecture went out the window?
Yeah, I think it really just came down to the simple fact of I thought in my, my heart of hearts that the business was going to be my future.
Yeah.
And so business was going to be my lane, and that's where I put my focus, and I put that on the back burner.
Yep.
Now, I did do a few things along the way, as I've talked about that period of time in between where I built a couple houses and did those kind of things. And so I'm still a very, was a jack of all trades, master of none when it comes to building. But, I've done a lot of building, and I enjoy renovating and things like that. So that's the stuff that I get to do fun outside of my day job.
Yeah.
I've seen some of the handiwork too, and it's pretty nice. Yeah, it's definitely.
And I'm sure that as your customers that interact with you, you've got family business experience. You understand the nuances of all of those things that you mentioned. You got to eat last. You got to pay the bills. Got to worry about a million things.
Yeah.
And by the way, still worry about running the business. And then your experience and understanding of the construction industry as a whole, just by knowing the business dynamics, knowing kind of the things that need to happen to start and finish a project, that's got to be something that your customers dig, to be able to have that level of empathy to be able to work with them.
And I'll tell you where I figured that part out, if I'm being honest. Again, you have to remember I'm pretty young at this point, right? And so, when I didn't get hired the first time, I went into that job interview thinking in terms of I got to be a banker. I need to talk banker talk. I don't even know what banker talk is yet at this point, right? But, I had a couple of friends that were in it, and they were always on me hey, if you ever need a job, come talk to us, right? And so, the first time I interviewed, that was the lane that I picked as far as how I was going to interview, and thought I asked good questions and didn't get hired, right? And so about 6 months later, they called me back and they said, hey, we want you to actually meet with our boss this time. Mm-hmm. Because I think maybe he was the one that made me pass the first go around, or they had somebody with more experience. I mean, keep in mind, I had no banking experience. Sure. And went in, and I thought about the first interview, and I thought, I understand, to your point, I understand what a business owner goes through in many cases. Not all situations. We all face different sets of challenges and different sets of circumstances in business. But I knew that I brought a pretty good story to the table and experience. And that was one of his first questions is, why do you want to make this move, from being in manufacturing to banking? And I shared with him my story about how I sat with my parents. I sat in meetings with banks on the other side of the table. And I just was fortunate enough that we had a really great banker that was such an advisor. And I had a real level of respect for him. And, he was somebody my dad would call on a Saturday or 8 o'clock at night and say, hey, we need to do this, or we may have to change some things. And they had that kind of a relationship. And so, I thought about those conversations in my interview, and I shared with him my story about in business and how I have watched a business go from, nothing to something, and, the role that I played in that. And we ended up having a fantastic conversation. And it had clicked for me in that moment. I'm well, if I don't get hired, maybe I really should pursue this, right? Because I talked to myself in a big circle in the interview, but they hired me, and I hit the ground running, and I really did hit the ground running. I was very successful right out of the gate, and I was like, this is such a good fit for me. I had such a passion for helping business owners on the other side of the table, trying to figure out how do we take this great idea and, turn it into a real business. Mm-hmm. And so, again, going back to impact, there is nothing that gets me more excited than helping a business owner take their business to the next level, or take that next big step in their business cycle, or help them, protect what they've been building their entire lives, or how to exit and ride off into the sunset comfortably and make sure that their baby, which is their business, is in great hands. And so I think that was probably that first quarter out of the gate when I was hired was when I really realized I had a true passion for what I was doing, and I still do. I mean, a little over 20 years later, I still have that same passion coming to work every day.
And you can tell. I mean, it's one of those things that I think it's easy to see the people that have passion in what they're doing versus the ones that don't. Right? The people that have passion are the ones that rise to the top, right? That end up becoming the regional presidents, that end up becoming the leaders in their businesses because you get it. You understand what it takes. You can be empathetic through those conversations. I mean, I know that that's been an advantage of mine. I didn't really understand it at the beginning of my career because I thought, everybody had the same level of skill set, or I didn't know anything compared to everybody else. But my advantage was always that I was around business. I understood it. I understand the magnitude of what I was doing on a regular basis. And if I was able to help them, then it was going to ultimately help them put their kids through college. It was going to help them pay their bills, go on vacation, enjoy their life. And I got that quickly, right? So that's the thing that we've really been trying to build into all of our team members too, is to try to explain to them and impart that into them and say, this isn't just about accounting. This isn't just about banking. This is about impact.
Yeah. Changing people's lives.
You can change people's lives as a banker. You can change people's lives as an accountant. And I had a really good conversation with a friend of ours who has a very, very successful business. That might be putting it mildly. He is one of the most successful people in our area, and he's got a couple of kids. And I asked him that question. I said, how are you preparing your kids for the next chapter of their life? They're growing up. They're starting to get involved in their own passion projects. And, how do you get them to understand kind of the grit and grind that you had to go through to get to where you're at when they're not going to experience that, right? There's no grit and grind in their world whatsoever. There's private jets and there's beautiful this, that, or the other. It's only, it's a very different part of the world, right? How do you fabricate that kind of challenge for your children, right? And he looked at me and he goes, well, you're an accountant, right? I said, yeah, I'm an accountant. And he says, well, how do you find passion in that? And he said, it's the same as anything. Whatever it is that you're doing, if you're an accountant, if you're a banker, if you're building houses, is that you've got to be able to create that in your mind, the purpose that, you're creating in their world. So now, as your kids are how old now?
So I have my oldest is 26, my middle is 24.
Okay.
And then I've got a 14-year-old and then also a 12-year-old.
So, that's a lot.
Yeah.
How do you?
Let's unpack that, huh?
Yeah, let's start to peel that onion back a little bit. So when you think about your kids now, is that you've got a wide age range of these kids, and they've had a different experience probably at each level.
Absolutely.
Right? Is that the oldest probably saw a little bit more of that earlier on in the career and the struggle and the hustle and this, that, or the other. And then the youngest now is seeing, the fruits of the labor of your career, and maybe things are a little bit easier and there's a little bit more money and there's a little bit, less struggle, right? So
wouldn't it be nice if we could just do it backwards, right?
Yeah, right. So, what are the things that you feel in the difference between your oldest and your youngest probably on the scale here is that how are you trying to create that level of, scarcity for that youngest as opposed to the scarcity that was just naturally there for your oldest?
Yeah. Well, what's funny about that is, because of the age gap, right? My oldest went into the military when he was 17 years old. He went into the Coast Guard, just recently got out actually, and now is employed. Has great work ethic, right? He did see that. He also saw Dad miss a lot of swim meets and other things that they were working on because at that time, you were climbing the ladder, you were working hard to try to carve out a place in the corporate world for yourself, right? Same with my daughter. She has, she graduated from YSU, so we'll give a Gwen's shout out right out of the gate for that.
Every
podcast has got to have that one. Did extremely well. Extremely proud of her. She went in and graduated with honors, did all the work, and has found herself in a great job. And I'm fortunate to have them both very close by. One's in North Royalton and one's in just outside of Pittsburgh. So
awesome.
Did they get tucked into the family business at all, even after you were out?
No, because I was out of it. I was out of it by the time they were even of any age where they could actually do something, right?
Yeah.
But with Jake and Callie, it's very different now. And you're right. I often take a step back and I think about like what my older kids saw, that version of dad versus kind of what, and Callie's I take ownership as my stepkid. And Jake, what they see the version of dad now, and so I think they still see a strong work ethic. They still see dad out of bed at 5 o'clock in the morning, and we're everybody's up and moving, and
we do have to drive them to like 8 different places.
Right. Yeah, we're driving kids to schools and all that stuff. And then try to be home at a reasonable hour, and then usually it's, hey, Dad, can you take me to the gym? And I use Jake as a good example because he is he's got aspirations to play at a higher level, and I've always told my kids, and this kind of goes back to your question, is I've always told all of them, like, I can't want whatever it is that you want more than you do. Like, I can't will you there. I can't live vicariously through you. All I can do is give you the resources and remove the obstacles. Mm-hmm. And quite honestly, like, that's what we do as leaders.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
For our people. And so, I think my kids would probably, if they were all sitting here, would say there was 2 very different versions of dad, because I realized how fast it goes. And it does. It goes fast. Like, they turn 18 and you blink one day and you're like, when did that happen? Mm-hmm. And so that is always in the back of my mind. I used to chuckle, like I was, I got one that's graduating high school and I'm coaching T-ball again, and I would just kind of laugh about it. But I was like, you know what, be in the moment, be here, have fun. It used to be how quick and how was I going to get there? And I'm changing my suit in the parking lot. And, it's a little bit, I think the work ethic is still there. And what's been fun is, as my older kids have gotten older, is they recognize, like, wow, what it takes to provide what you provided. Like, I think they really understand that more today than they probably ever have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I think that from my perspective has always been the hope, is that the kids see it, mm-hmm. right? And while they will never struggle the way that we may have, they'll see the level of effort that you're putting forth. They'll see the fact that you worked your tail off. Hopefully there won't be as much resentment for missing X, Y, or Z, as much as appreciation for, I see why he did it. Yeah. And I see why maybe he was active in as many things as he could have been, but he wasn't at 100% of those events. Yeah. And so that's certainly something I think about a ton. It's like, the correlation between business and being a father is something that we talk about pretty often on the pod here, and it's something that's always on my mind, because the kids are young and it goes by quick. I mean, I live by the adage of, you've got 18 summers, you have 17 actual summers, and then 1 collective summer over the rest of their entire life. Right. Yeah. So much like there's a clock reminding us of the time that we're spending doing this, that, or the other, like every year that they go by, an 8-year-old, I'm thinking, I got 11 more. Mm-hmm. Right?
Well, when you hired me, I'll never forget this in the interview. It was, my job was to give you a summer, give you more summer, give you more time with your children. And that's always been the bar for me is can Tim do the things that he talked about doing? Can he take a couple of weeks off for the fair every year? And it's pretty special to be able to see that and understand, like, it's why you did this, why you made the investments, why you did all these things. And it's tough too, as a kid, and we talked about it last week on the pod too. You don't always know what your parents are going through. So until you are old enough to understand a little bit of that, you never really get your true, appreciation from your children. And it took me a long time to understand what my family went through. And it's so special now to see that. And you have this almost second opportunity, which is a whole different ballgame. Right? Yeah.
And I definitely, to a degree, I even look at it that way of, like, it's really easy. I'm one of those people. I like to fish and I like to hunt. I like the outdoors, right? So I spend a lot of time outdoors mm-hmm. where I can think, and mm-hmm. I do think about that. And those things do weigh heavily on your mind as a parent. You will, anybody that's a parent knows that you are constantly questioning, are you doing a good job? Are you doing the right things for your kids? And so I think about all that stuff, and I definitely, over the course of time, have absolutely reflected on, the type of father I was, present as much as I could be for my two older kids. But, as I look at the younger kids, it's a matter of, being present. Like, I can't say that enough of just, I know the importance of it. I know the impacts of it. And that's really how I have tried to adjust my thinking around that. Work is always going to be there. And as you guys know, we're in difficult jobs. I mean, it's not all days are easy ones. Some days they're great, and you ride those highs when those happen. You have a big win or what have you. But there's also days when you have some really challenging situations that do require extra time, do require extra thinking, and maybe you don't leave it at the office and it's on your mind till the next morning. But I really have learned, and it's taken a number of years to get to that point, but to compartmentalize that. And when I'm with my son at the gym, we're at the gym. We're focused on his goals, his aspirations. And that's just, that's how I try to move forward. I don't know that I get it 100% right all the time, but yeah.
And I think like anything is a muscle, that if you train it, if you practice it, it gets better.
Yeah.
Because I know that I'm not where I want to be in terms of being able to be truly present 100% of the time that I should be, because our job collectively, I mean, between both of what we do for our customers and our clients, is you're trying to take stress off of their plate, right? So you're trying to take something off of someone else's shoulders and put it on yours. And try to carry that stress and try to carry that for them and help them achieve whatever it is that they need to achieve in their business and their goals and their finances, whatever. So it's very easy to carry too much. It's very easy to put on those very broad Sam shoulders and just carry things around. I know that I feel the same way, where sometimes it's just like that balance is what it is. Sometimes you go too far this way, sometimes you go too far this way, but finding some way to come back to center. For me, it's been easy for the kids to be that center point, because I know at the end of the day that whatever job I do, whatever tax return or financial statement or consulting project that I do for my client, if I'm dead tomorrow, they'll find another accountant. They may not find one as good or as good looking or as funny or as kind.
Down the list here.
Things, but they will find another accountant for sure, right? But my kids will never find it. The same dad.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and that's just something that is just, you have to remember that, and you got to like shock that into your system over and over again.
I mean, you do such a good job too. I mean, even the other day I set up a meeting. I'm 2 months into the calendar at this point, and Tim says, I can't be there. That's my son's birthday. I'm going to get him off the bus. And I was like, well, this is an important meeting, and I have so much respect for you saying no. I mean, we'll find another day.
And that's hard to do. That's hard to do.
Yeah, but you do it every time. I mean, if it's on there and you know what you want to do, you take care of your family, that's the most important thing here. And it does translate to our business too. I mean, we do that for our employees. We have that same level of flexibility that, if you can't do it, go be with your family. You don't always have another chance.
And honestly, I mean, it's a good mechanism for me to understand if it's the right client or right opportunity as well, right? Because if I tell somebody, hey, I can't come to this meeting, it's my son's birthday, I like to get him off. I like to get him out of school that day. I like to spend some time with him, because I normally don't. It's something that I normally don't see my kids until 6, 7 o'clock at night when I get home. But like, I like to be there certain times, just make sure that I'm surprising him. It's out of the ordinary. It's nothing fancy. It's not like he's getting a giant birthday gift. I'm just there to pick him up from school, right? And if I go to a client and I say, hey, I can't make this meeting 2 months ahead of time because it's my son's birthday, and they get upset and ultimately don't want to meet with me, then too bad. Don't care, right? No matter how much money is associated with that relationship or opportunity associated with that relationship, again, it's my kid, and that's the most important thing that I have in my life.
But what's funny though is, and you'll appreciate this, right? As you get older, and you do get a little bit more successful in your position and what you're doing, there's a level of confidence that comes with being able to have that conversation with that customer.
Yep.
Right? Whereas the younger version of yourself, you might have been like, it's just so important, right? And you get in that mindset. But what you realize is, as you get older and you spend more time around people and you get closer with your customers, they also have families. They're also fathers. They're also mothers. And I can't really think of any one instance where I didn't have to adjust and have that conversation with a customer, and they were like, "No, that's more important. Go do that."
Right. Exactly.
But it takes a number of years when you're climbing the corporate ladder to understand that.
Yep. And I mean, you're fearful of it at first because you're worried that how they're going to react. But then conversely, the way that it ultimately always ends up happening is that they say, "Oh, I like this guy even more now." Because he has values that are aligned with mine, and I'm a father, and my kids are important, or I regret maybe not being around as much for my kids when they were that age, or this, that, or the other. And then little things like that ultimately end up then strengthening those bonds, as opposed to what you think earlier on in your career that they're going to weaken them or make you look worse than it should.
There's more common ground in those conversations when you can be a real human, or also, like you said, it's kind of insulate yourself from the people who don't think like you. If they're willing to sacrifice everything for their job, then that probably isn't always the right person for it. Like we need to make sure that we're treating our families the way they need to be treated.
So let's change course a little bit here and talk a little through your philanthropic work.
Yeah.
Because I know you've got a couple of projects that you're passionate about. One of which is one of Will and I's favorite. So we go to the night at the races. Sam and the team at Huntington do a fundraiser for Pelotonia, a cancer research platform. And they've had a lot of success in raising money, and it's also one of those events that we go to a lot of events, and you go to these events kind of out of obligation for this, that, or the other. But there's a pocket of them that you're like, I am looking forward to this because it's fun, it's laid back.
As soon as that RSVP comes out, I'm like, put it on the calendar.
Mark your calendar.
Yeah.
Right?
So let's talk a little bit about that one in particular, and then want to kind of expand into some of the other stuff that you're involved in. How did you get started, raising money for them? Why?
Yeah.
How has this gotten to where it is today?
So this is actually a big part of Huntington's culture, to be quite honest with you. So I think it was my first, maybe second year with the bank that we started kind of talking about Pelotonia, which Pelotonia is one of the largest bike rides in the country, and it is an enormous fundraiser to fight cancer for the James Cancer Research Center, which is associated with Ohio State, as many of you know. It is one of those things, and when I look back on it now, being involved with it, I think for 16 years, something like that. I've ridden, I think, 14 or 15 times.
What's the max miles? Got to ask.
I did 100 miles, 2 years. Whoa. Yeah. That's a long ways on a bike.
That's
a long ways on a bike.
So what's that take? For me, like 2-3 days, something like that.
A week.
I mean, if you're going,
you only
are
have
you
one
going
gear
20?
on your bike, Will, so,
11 is max
The
speed.
first time I didn't train nearly enough. Let's just say that. I started really cramping bad at 75 miles. But I did make it. And learned my lesson the following year to train a little bit. So,
sure.
But about my best time was right around 8 hours. So no land speed records, but
still a lot. I mean, that's a lot of time on the
better
bike,
than the
right?
first year. But I would really say Pelotonia is one of those things that is a big part of our culture. To be quite honest with you, it is. There isn't a market within the company that doesn't participate in it. For one, the bank is extremely supportive of it, in the fundraising side of it, and the getting. It doesn't matter if you're from, take your pick in our footprint. It could be Chicago, it could be Detroit. They're bringing folks in. They're taking care of like our room and just our travel expenses to get there. They encourage everybody to show up for this. So if you don't want to ride the bike, you can volunteer. You can be a virtual rider. There are all these things that you can do, but the engagement and kind of how I've watched it grow over the years with some of the events that we do. We host those events to support ridership, so that the fundraising effort is, it's a pretty good sized fundraise to ride even 25 miles. So what we try to do is host events like the night at the races or a golf outing. There are different things that each market does to bowling and all. Just take your pick of different events that we all go to. To raise money to support the ridership. So 100% of what we raise for those events goes, to ridership and ultimately to the fundraising efforts of Pelotonia.
So you sponsor those that are going to ride in the race.
Yeah. So everybody does their own, fundraising. But if you're short, a little bit, like we utilize those events to so people aren't coming out of pocket even more, right?
Yep.
So that's kind of how it works. But the Pelotonia itself is such a special weekend when we're all in Columbus. We usually have a get together with all the bank employees prior to the evening events that kick off, and you're hearing survivor stories. I can honestly tell you, my first year, it was I got to go do this because I'm being told we need more people to participate, right? And that has gone from, after my first event, of being there and experiencing the event, and hearing the survivor stories, hearing about the work that the James Cancer Research Center does, and then you ride and you see people sitting out there in their yards holding signs saying, "You saved my wife's life. Thank you for everything you're doing." I mean, they're just, the support that comes out is unbelievable. It would boggle your mind. I remember coming across the finish line the first year, and I got emotional because I was blown away by how many people were there to cheer everybody on coming through the finish line.
Yep.
So, that's, after that year, the first year, then I got, very involved, and I tried to make it a point to be a part of the committees to form, for some of the events. I ultimately chaired several campaigns when I oversaw the market in Pittsburgh, and then I've chaired the campaign here for the last couple of years with another one of my colleagues. And so it's something that I believe brings our colleagues closer together. It's a cause, and it's an important cause, because there are very few of us, unfortunately, that can raise their hand and say that we have not been, somebody in our family or a close friend has been impacted by cancer, right? There's very few people that can raise their hand and say that hasn't happened to me. Mm-hmm. And so I love the cause. I love what it stands for. I love how they operate. The advancements that they've made, the scholarships that they've extended to some world-class talent. And mind you, all of that research and study is shared across the world.
Yeah.
And it's just a special organization. I couldn't imagine missing a year. I really couldn't. That's how important it is to me.
Yeah, I mean, to have the opportunity to be able to be a part of something that has that level of magnitude is something that creates purpose. Right, as we talk about finding your purpose in what you do, and sometimes it's not easy to find the purpose in whatever it is that you're doing, right? Especially earlier on in your career, it's very difficult, right? Mm-hmm. You're a bank teller, you're getting yelled at by somebody because you don't have enough 20s or quarters or this, that, or the other, and little old ladies that come to the bank and whatever, and then you have something that you can grasp onto that shows you the power of what happens when people come together. Yeah. That's something that's always been shocking to me in our organization is we chose early on to not necessarily have one organization, but to let everybody pick every year, right? And every year we match their contributions. And the first couple of years we started to raise a substantial amount of money. And the first year that was really shocking to me, we had the Melina Foundation. It was a young girl who lost her life to brain cancer, and her parents took that tragedy and built this amazing organization. And we ended up writing him a check for something like $20,000. Mm-hmm. And we were a pretty small organization at the time, I mean, maybe 30, 40 people in our team. And it was, the contributions that each of those people made out of their paycheck on a regular basis, the match from the company, the other little fundraising initiatives that we did throughout the year. And I never in my mind imagined that that early on in our company that we'd be able to make that large of an impact. But it just shows the power of what you can accomplish when you bring a bunch of people together and center around one mission and rally around one mission. And to your point, there's not a single person that doesn't have some, at minimum, tangential exposure to cancer and the negative impact that it creates around us. So I know that everybody on the team that we get to interact with loves it. We love going to it. What made you do Night of the Races? I mean, that was something that it's something that's different as opposed to the golf outing or the gala or the this, that, or the other. And
it was. I wish I could take all the credit for it being a great idea to do, but I had kids in sports and things like that. Night at the Races are always big for that. I went to one of the ones for baseball, and I thought this would be a great fundraiser for us in the market. It's not necessarily it's not hard to do, And most people generally enjoy it because of the time of year. We usually try to do it sometime in February or March, and I know that's not always great for the accountants.
Listen, we need an excuse to drink in
It's
February.
perfect for us.
Let's keep it there.
Please,
It's good.
yeah. March is good.
But generally speaking, there's not a lot going on, and it's just a fun event. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but we definitely, there are golf outings and things like that we attend. It was something different to do in the market. Same thing, bring people together, have some good laughs.
It's inclusive,
Have
right?
fun together. Anybody can do it.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, that's
you don't have
the
to be an
fun part.
athlete like us.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And and the funny thing is I think I forget how many other Night at the Races have now happened across the footprint. Like we were one of the first to do it, but it's become a great fundraiser for a number of markets.
Yeah.
And it is. It's an easier one to do, and the overhead side of it, like you actually net you have a really nice fundraise for what the time and effort, and you're trying to feed everybody and have a nice venue and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it was just to do something different that would be fun and we thought people would enjoy doing, and it has. It's grown considerably every year. And we may have to change venues this year. I don't know yet.
It might be a little tight in there this year.
Yeah.
Especially now after this.
Yeah.
Right.
I know that, we both sit on a handful of boards here locally, and fundraising is always an interesting conversation, right? Is that there's so many organizations that they're so focused on the fundraising portion of it that they forget the expense that they're incurring to raise those funds, right? Is that they spend all this time and energy, and they take all of their team members to focus on this event, right? And it's over the top, and it's an amazing event that a lot of people love to come to. But not only did you spend more money, not only did you have more overhead to have the bigger event, but how much time then did your people take away from your mission to ultimately now spend on this? So the net is not always that great of a lot of those events because of that. I know that we try to educate our nonprofits about that, is that stay focused on what you do best. And if you're doing this fundraiser, even if you're raising a tremendous amount of money, if you got to look at how much time you spent to get that, and is that taking away from your mission, or are you ultimately still putting the same amount of money in the bank as you should from what you're doing?
I think I would think a lot of nonprofit organizations, and some that I've been involved with, they struggle with that, right? Because you don't always have a full-time person leading that stuff, and it is, it can be a distraction, from the kind of the core mission at times. I think, when I think of some of the boards that I'm involved with, I feel like they've kind of gotten to the point now of where their events are running like a finely tuned machine, and they know what to do and how to do it, and one's over, they're already scheduling and setting things up for the upcoming year, and I, to be quite honest with you, I've been probably not as involved in like those type of committees on the different boards. Obviously, I'm the Sam. I get to see the numbers. Sometimes I'm on the when you're a banker, they ask you to be on a lot of finance committees and things like that. But and Tim knows that too. So, but
I always got to be the damn treasurer.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just want to do marketing.
You want to be the secretary?
Yeah.
Sometimes I just want to be the secretary.
Yeah,
I take lousy notes though, so that'd probably be
AI
fired
now. You
quick.
just fire up your AI note taker. That'll be okay.
That's true. You know what? Now that I think about it,
Sign me up.
I'm going to sign up to be the secretary from here on out and just fire up the old fireflies and take notes. That's it.
Well, that was one of the things, Sam, that about you, and when I didn't know you at all, like 4 or 5 years ago, and then seeing you at the Pelotonia event, and then seeing you down at doing the YBI, and then just I know you are involved with a lot of things, but how do you juggle that? How do you decide, like, hey, you have the children, you have a lot of things on your plate. How many boards are you on right now? At least 2 I know of, right?
So it's a moving target, honestly. So coming off of some, and going on one new one. But I am involved in a lot. But, I'll go back to kind of what I said early on, that how I juggle it is I the impact piece of it's important to me. And I also have always made it a point, it's how we got to know each other, quite honestly, is, I make it a point to get to know the people on the board, or at least certainly try to. Do I get that right 100% of the time? No. But those connections and the network that you form by being involved in that stuff. And to Tim's point, like there are boards where you can just show up and go through the motions and attend the board meeting and leave, or you can make a choice to get to know some people that are involved in it. And, and if you stop and think about it, I'm in the world of business and commercial lending and, in banking in general. So, there isn't a single person in the room that may not need me at some point in time. And why not get to know them? It's not, I don't, I guess I should say, I don't join the boards with the mindset of it being a self-serving thing, but, it happens naturally because you are involved and you do get to know people and you do, I might sit next to somebody new at every board meeting and just start talking with them about their business and how's things. Next thing you know, you're into a conversation. But the boards that I'm involved on are heavily focused on economic development and all the things that we are, everybody I feel like more so than ever, we're all really starting to row in the same direction in a lot of ways. And so whether we're talking about, workforce development or housing, affordable housing, or just economic development in general, I love that stuff. I love being involved in what's going on and then trying to figure out like how can we help, or how can I help individually if it's needed, whatever it is. I love that about all the boards that I'm on. They all give a little bit of different aspect to it, and you have to keep in mind that my territory is fairly sizable. I start in Columbiana County and I go clear to Erie, PA.
Yeah.
So I think it's important that there are a lot of micro communities within my territory as well, and so trying to be as involved as I can be everywhere I can be, I think is extremely important because we are a larger bank in the market, and I am of a big believer that like it has to feel local. People got to be able to relate to you, and I talk with my team about that all the time. I'm fortunate I've got a pretty engaged team as well, and they're very involved. And not just my direct team, my collective team are involved in an awful lot of things in the market. And, I like to think we're all thinking that way. But, there's always room for improvement.
Well, what people want and what's important in Mahoning County and what people want and what's important in Ashtabula County may not always be the same thing. When you zoom out at the end of the day, everybody wants progress, everybody wants improvement, everybody wants safety, everybody wants opportunity. Yeah. But, at the same time, it may not be the same thing.
How you get there is going to be different
Correct.
in each of those areas. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I see that, now with our community now being a part of the Lake to River initiative and the Lake to River spinoff, and the idea of us having this larger area that we're working on trying to get rowing in the same direction, right, is that there is a tremendous amount of opportunity here in Northeast Ohio, and with all the things that are going on, either it be in defense contracting or the renovation of the GM facility, for the big AI initiative, or the Kimberly-Clark monstrosity that they're building. We've got, Kimberly-Clark is 1 million square feet, and then the GM facility is 6.2 million square feet. And now we've got to find ways to fill those things up with people. And then those people need to have homes to live in, to your point about all the puzzle pieces that need to come together for us to really kind of grab onto the opportunity that's in front of us right now. It's going to require all hands on deck. Yeah. It's going to require everybody to come to the table and say, well, I have an idea about this, and here's where lending can fit into this, or here's the things that we've learned that we can help give back to our community to take advantage of this opportunity that's in front of us right now. Because
we keep talking about it. Exactly. Like we're here, we're talking about it all the time. I know you talk about it quite a bit. We've talked about it on the podcast. A handful of people who have been on already are saying the same things. We have something special. We just need to keep that at the top of mind for everyone when we're having those conversations with our clients, with anybody who's listening to this too.
So I'm curious, Sam, from your perspective, having as much involvement in economic development and the opportunity that this region has in front of us compared to where we have been historically, and kind of in line with the theme of the podcast being failures, is that what are the failures that you, from your perspective, this community, this region maybe has made in the past that we're starting to get away from, or that we can do into the future to avoid some of the challenges and some of the challenging times that we've had in this community?
I feel like you're going to get me in trouble with this question, but I will give you this is my honest, and
we can bleep it out.
This is Sam's opinion. The day when everybody that lives here and is from here talks about it in a positive light and what it really is. And I will give you a great example. If you were anywhere near the city limits on Friday or Saturday night, tens of thousands of people came through the city safely.
Yep.
Had a great time at all the bars and restaurants. Everybody got along. It was a very friendly group collectively. I mean, I made my rounds and walked around. We started at the restaurant downtown and made our way to and everybody was having a great time. Like, this is a great place to live and work. I don't care what anybody says. We have to move on from whatever our history was. And I feel extremely strongly about that because I have friends that live elsewhere. And when I talk about working in Youngstown, the perception always baffles me. And I make it a point to pause and correct. And let me tell you why that's not the case. Let me tell you about Youngstown State University. Let me tell you about YBI and all the things that they're doing. And you just start thinking about all the wins.
Yep.
Like, we are at a point right now where we could have such a generational shift. We are in for a fantastic ride. I truly believe that in my heart of hearts. Over the next 10 to 20 years, we'll look back on this as old guys and say, wow, I remember when.
Yeah.
But I think that's probably my number one.
Yeah.
Is when we all start talking about it,
I
like
got
the
chills.
great place that it truly is.
Right.
I'm just being honest. And I'm
Seriously.
not originally from here.
Yeah.
I grew up in a small little country town. Like, when I talked to my mom about, hey, I work in Youngstown, she's like, be careful, honey, right?
Yep.
I'm like, Mom, like, it's very safe.
It's fine.
People have that perception sometimes, and it really bothers me. I know it bothers you guys, I'm sure, at times as well. But I make it a point to pause and correct every single time.
Yep.
What was the original question, Tim? I got off track.
No, I mean, you nailed it. As far as my concern was, like, what are the failures that this community has made that we need to avoid so we don't make them into the future? And I think your point about telling the story is important. When I went to Youngstown State University at that time, which wasn't that long ago, in the early 2000s, someone said to me the other day that they looked at me and said, you were born in the 1900s. And I almost cried. Yeah. But early 2000s at Youngstown State University, the mentality was, what are you doing to get out of here? What are the things that I love Youngstown State University. It has changed my life. But there were pockets of professors at the time that were like, well, you got to get out of here. You got to do this, that, or the other to get out of here. And that sentiment has changed now. When you go and interact with the professors at YSU now, they're not viewing it the same way. They're not telling the same story that they used to. And to your point, Sam, I think that that's the thing that all of us need to continue to do is tell the right story. Because I, like you, I'm all over the country doing the work that we're doing now between the accounting firm and a lot of the other things that we've done related to that with our private equity partners and the other businesses that we have across the country. Is I'll be in a room with people and there's a Harvard grad and there's a Yale grad and there's a Stanford grad, there's a guy from New York City, there's a guy from LA, and there's a Youngstown guy, and they look at me like I'm here to take everybody's wallets. What they don't know is, number one,
It's a long game. You're not going to take it from them right now.
But I mean, I'm telling that story as often as I can. Like, it's one of my favorite things that we did in incubating Youngstown Clothing Company and working with those guys is that I wasn't doing that for the T-shirts. The T-shirts are great. I love them. They're super comfortable. But the fact that I wear that proud in every airport that I'm in, and I stop and have conversations with people, and they say, oh, yeah, Youngstown, basically it's like Gary, Indiana. And I'm like, no. Youngstown is in a different place than it's ever been. Youngstown is at the forefront of additive manufacturing. It's at the forefront of the opportunity in the defense industry. It's at the forefront of all these other exciting things and the renovations that are happening, the mindset shifts that are happening. Like, here is where you want to be, and the opportunity is really just getting started. I mean, we have this phenomena that we talk about a lot as the silver tsunami. You know, you're probably see this very clearly from your perspective too, is that the vast majority of those middle market businesses in our community. Now, these are those middle market businesses, and I say middle market, 100 million and below. Okay, it's a pretty wide range, but 100 million and below basically encapsulates, I don't know, 75% of the businesses in the country, right?
Maybe more. Yeah, I mean,
They're the ones that are sponsoring the baseball teams. They're the ones that are paying the taxes in your community. They're the ones that are impacting change. And more than half of those businesses are owned by the baby boomer generation. Yeah. So it's going to be the largest transition of wealth in the history of the world, because 1/7 of the world's wealth is currently controlled by that generation in and of itself. Who's going to take on all that opportunity? So that's the story that I'm continuing to tell now, is that if you're looking for somewhere to start, to build, to buy a business, to have resources around you, to build something of generational magnitude and generational wealth, come here and do it. And buy one of those businesses and partner with a good bank and partner with a good accountant and partner with a good lawyer and start to build your legacy rather than working on building someone else's for them in one of those big towns that you're paying $5,000 a month in rent for or something silly.
And I mean, I get those opportunities a lot, right? To have, conversations with businesses who are operating outside of this area. Some of them are coming potentially into the PA side of my market. Some of them are potentially coming into this side of the market. And what I think is probably the other part of the question that you asked me, I think the other really important point is, and I've had the opportunity to work in several different markets, so this is not the only place I've been, right? What I will tell you is, and what I tell business owners is, you will not find better, hardworking people, period. You won't. I mean, we all, whether I just grew up across the line or not, we all were raised with that work ethic. I love we talk about the Youngstown grit. That grit exists. Take your pick. It could be Mahoning, Trumbull County, right, Columbiana County, Lawrence County, Mercer County, Erie. There is just a pure grit. And I love that about, the people that I get to interact with and I get to work with and the business owners that are here. And I truly believe we get the opportunity to host a business thinking about coming here. I think we win those a lot.
They're going to be
impressed. Genuinely do.
Yeah. I agree, and that border of PA, Ohio, to me, it's nothing, right? I mean, from Sharon to Hubbard,
I can tell you with 100% confidence, those folks that live in PA spend an awful lot of money over here, and vice versa
on gas specifically.
Yeah, on gas specifically.
It is awesome to hear and to understand. Like this market is special, and we keep talking about it. The more we talk about it, the more it catches on, right? So, I'm not going to stop anytime soon unless someone forces me to. I don't. So just keep it up, keep it going, right?
Yeah, I tell it to anybody that'll listen.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that there's ever been an opportunity like this in our community. I mean, you go back maybe to the pre-steel industry where people got in at the right time and caught that thing on the way up, and they ultimately started to do something associated with either the steel industry or maybe GM in the early days or something like that. But now we see this opportunity where it's clear to see the momentum. It's clear to see the shifts. It's clear to see these opportunities. And you can have a different work-life balance here. Is that you have a cost of living in New York City, you have a cost of living in LA, you have a cost of living just about anywhere else in the country other than maybe like Plano, Texas, that is very high. So you have to make a really high rate of earning to ultimately buy yourself the time. Whereas here, you can still make a really great living and also have the time. So it's like that Goldilocks and that opportunity of having your cake and eating it too here, because our generation, I think specifically, after going through a series of unprecedented events, right? It's been nonstop unprecedented events since I was in high school, whether it was September 11th, whether it was, the
08-09
recession,
crash,
whether it was COVID, whether it was any of these other things that we've experienced. It's like, you need to spend the time with your family. You need to spend the time doing things that are important. Time is the most valuable thing that you have. So why not come and start your life and start your business in an area where you can actually afford to have time?
Yeah.
So
Think about how many times, and think about how many customers you could probably think about as well. Business owners in the market, generations, 3, 4 generations. And you think about the history that goes along with it, kind of goes along with what you were just saying of like, how many times did they have to reinvent themselves?
Yeah.
To survive and then thrive.
Yep.
And survive and then thrive, right? That's one of the things that I enjoy most about sitting with family business till this day is really talking about like, hey, when my grandfather started this business, this is what he was doing. I mean, I literally had a conversation the other day where they were talking about making deliveries with horse and buggy, the first generation. Jeez. I was beside myself to listen to the stories. And like, I'm already a little bit of a history geek. So to sit and listen to, well, and then after the World War, we did this and this is what we had to do. I mean, I'm always fascinated by that. And in this particular area, there are so many great stories.
Yeah.
And when I talk about that grit, I mean, it is here, it is thriving, and it is ingrained in the next generation. And it just kind of goes along with what you were just saying.
Yeah.
And it was a necessity too. I mean, I think our role as advisors, solving their problems and creating an area where you're so proactive, you don't have to change out of necessity. You change and you're breaking the mold. We're giving them ideas and opportunities to do that. You as a banker with some of the financing. I mean, let's shift that mentality. We already have that built into us, but now we get to take it to the next level and offer some different solutions to those problems that our grandparents probably aren't used to. They every day had to wake up and adapt and overcome all of these obstacles. And now we're here. Now let's start thinking about the future and how we can make a change in that mentality, right?
Yeah. So kind of switching gears from the community failures to Sam's failures. Right?
Oh, boy.
We don't have that much time.
No,
but.
we don't. We don't.
But, a lot of the premise of this is, we talk to people about their personal failures for a reason, because life is hard, business is hard. You're experiencing failures often. And we live in this world of social media where we tell the stories of success. We show the fruits of labor. You see the pictures of vacations, you see the cars, you see the houses, you see all the other crap. But at the end of the day, people need to know that there was a mountain of failures that led to those successes, right? Yeah. If I had an Instagram page, it would only be the failures, because that to me is a hell of a lot more relatable, because there's way more failures than there are successes.
Yeah. Healthy reminders anyways, right?
Yeah. And it's just, that's the thing that people don't understand, the fraction, that math, right? Is that to get that one success, there was probably 1,000 failures. And defining failure as something, it could be really small, it could be really big, but highlighting those failures that ultimately shaped who you are today is where we want people to relate and understand that you're not on your own. If you're failing today, if you're not succeeding in whatever it is that you're doing, you're one situation away, or you're one decision away, or evolution away from finding success. So you've got plenty of things in terms of whether it was building a house, or the family business that you're involved in, or banking, or leadership, or economic development. Is there one thing to you that stands out in any of those realms that you would look at and say, this was a failure that I learned the most from, that ultimately shaped who Sam is today? Yeah.
So I hate to repeat it, but I would, and I think I even shared this with Will, that leaving the business will probably forever go down as what I will say was maybe one of my biggest failures. And I say that because it's a great reminder of there was a time in my life where I had to make a very difficult decision. And as we all know, whether you're in a leadership position, a parent, what have you, when you have to make one of those decisions, and the impact, that it's not just the impact that happened on me, but it's the impact on my family, right? These are people that I will see at Christmas, and I will see at Thanksgiving, and we'll sit around the table, and so when I look back on that, when I think about the failure, I've thought a lot about this, and coming into this, this was a tough one for me, because I truly felt like I failed a lot of people who counted on me at that time. I felt like I hung in there, and I really thought that I was, trying to do the right thing, and I started to really worry. Then it became a matter of when you're a new husband and you got two young kids, you start really thinking hard about like this has to be what's most important. It has to be. Like, if nothing else, at a young age, I kind of, that was where my mind was at the time, was no matter what happens, I have to protect my family. Mm-hmm. And so as difficult of a decision as that was, and it was difficult because like I shared with you guys, I was working a full-time job and still working the business as much as I could give. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't healthy either, because then there was absolutely no work-life balance, you know? And so fortunately that wasn't forever, but, in the moment at the time, I thought it was going to be, and I think back to that time of, had I had, maybe if I'd have saved a little more money, right? Or maybe not had, cut things so close as a young guy, maybe I did without, maybe I would have had a little more wherewithal, right? To stay in the game and stay focused. Who knows where that company might be today? Mm-hmm. I also think that I've learned an awful lot, and I look at things after being in banking for 20 years and mostly in business and commercial lending, I look back and I've gotten to see many success stories, but I've also seen a lot of things that didn't go the way people thought, and I also saw the impact that had on their lives. And so when I think about it, and kind of going back to that decision, man, you want to talk about a decision that just ate at my soul. It ate at my soul to leave the business. But I kept what I thought was the most important thing in the very front of my mind, and that was my family. Mm-hmm. And that is why I made the decision I made. No, granted, I'm in a family business, so that's also my family, right? But, I had a great conversation with my grandmother at the time, and, my dad, and they were being as supportive as they could possibly be, given the impact that this would have on the business. Mm-hmm. They were absolutely trying to be as supportive as they could be, but it was weird for a while. I'm not gonna lie. It was. I knew that I'd let some people down, but being in it this long, and after them seeing how the success that I've had in banking, and I've had the opportunity to move up into management roles, and now the market president here in the Valley. I know they're proud of me. They've said that to me, but it took a number of years before that kind of, settled down a little bit. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know if it was a failure or not. It was a failure in one aspect, but a success in the other. And I think the life lesson learned in that moment was, sometimes you have to make an unpopular decision. And unfortunately, in our roles as leaders in the community and, in my organization, like sometimes you have to make tough decisions. Yep. They're not always easy. They're not always fun. But you have to, I think, see the bigger picture sometimes. And, I could get really long-winded about this one.
No, I think that hindsight is always 20/20, right? But what we've learned from this, at least, and anybody that's listening understands that decision, which was ultimately in your mind what you view as a failure, has shaped who you are, and then forced you or enabled you to know that like it's your responsibility as a banker to help others.
Yeah.
Right? So that fear of failure, that acknowledgement of letting others down, has now motivated you to put that into your career in banking, and saying that I'm going to fix that, right? I'm going to now help as many people as I can because of what I wasn't able to do at a young age, because you had to make a difficult decision. Yeah. You made the decision you had to make, right? There's no other thing that you can think about in that moment. You did what's right for your family. You did the right thing that you needed to do. But in hindsight now, if you look at how many people would you have been able to impact in that business, okay?
Yeah.
Versus how many people you're currently impacting in your role.
Yeah, it's not even close.
And it's not even on the same planet, because every business that you interact with, every business that your team members interact with, has an exponential effect on people.
Yeah.
I know that our business, I got a loan at the early years of our business with a small regional bank that should have never loaned me that money. I was 23, 24 years old. I had nothing, but they believed in me.
What was your net worth at the time? We talked about
It was negative $30,000, I think. You know,
Yeah.
I had a house with no equity. I had student loans, and I went to the bank and needed a couple $100,000 to buy into this business, and they didn't laugh at me, right? And they believed in me, and we had our stuff together, and I had great credit, and I had something they were willing to invest in, and they were taking a chance on. And now I understand that that's not how most banking works, and things have to be collateralized and blah 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 blah. But like, someone took a chance on me, someone believed in me, and then what did our business do, right? And we grew, and we have over 100 employees, and those 100 employees all have families, and we have clients that we're impacting positively. And that banker changed my life, changed all 100 of our employees' lives, changed many of our clients' lives. So you see that exponential impact of the things that you're doing. And on its surface level, that's where people don't necessarily always understand, you know, okay, well, you go into banking, how can you change people's lives? Well, that's exactly how, right? So,
well, it's been interesting over the years. I mean, to have, you know, I mean, I get the opportunity to meet with a lot of businesses and a lot of family businesses, because there's a lot of family business here in the Mahoning Valley region. And, you know, I often find myself tapping into my own history as it relates to, you know, some of those difficult conversations that you have to have if you really want to be a good advisor to a business owner. You know, sometimes you have to ask those tough questions.
the hard truth.
You know, does Junior really want to run the business, right? And you know,
and is he capable?
Yeah,
right.
Have
If
you
you were
ever-
going to hire this kid off the street,
Yeah.
would you believe in him, or do you just believe in him
know,
because he's your kid?
Over the years, I've had a few customers say to me, "Thank you for really pressing me to really have a deeper conversation about this." You know, because I shared my own story. I said, I just want you to know, like, the reason I asked you these questions is I said, this is where I came from.
Yep.
And, you know, you always find yourself in just, the conversation doesn't ever go the way that you think it's going to go, but they're always good conversations.
Yep.
I think about the butterfly effect of that too, right? If you had never made that decision to go into banking, probably not sitting here right now. Or if you didn't get a loan, I mean, would I've ever met? I always
I don't
think
know.
about those
Yeah.
things. Where would we be? What does it look like? I'm glad we're here right now.
Yeah,
There's no doubt
somebody
about
else
that.
is in charge of that. You know how that goes.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what about on the construction side? I know that you're passionate about this. You've built a bunch of things, and do you look at any of those projects, or did you look at any of those projects in the meantime, where you get it built and you look at it and say, I got to tear it down, or I got to start this over, or I got to fix that, or I got to.
That's happened many times. It's
Right?
cost me a lot of money too. But you know, there's a flaw when it comes to building things, and it truly is that I think I can do anything. Right? I have built a house from the ground up. You know, Will is actually
The fireplace is really
visited
nice.
the cabin up in the Allegheny Mountains,
beautiful.
and you know, we literally built that from the ground up, pouring footers, laying block. It took 7.5 years on the weekend to build it. And when I tell you it was 7.5 years every single weekend, my kids, you know, my older kids are like, oh, we got to go there and work. You know? So that's a whole nother hour that we can't get into. But, you know, there were a lot of things along the way where had I done them differently, or had I just even paused, you know, took a weekend off and thought the project through.
Yep.
You know, with age comes wisdom, I suppose. You know, I think you said something along the lines of, as we get older, we realize how not smart we are at times, right? I have learned over the years to, when I'm taking on a bigger project like that, or a renovation or something like that, to pause and think it through. Think about how it should go, when materials should show up. You know, just how to tackle the project in general, or like, don't want to do that first before you do this, because then it's going to cause you more work, you know. But when you're building a place and it takes 7.5 years to build it, and you're showing up on a Friday late because you got home from work, hurried up, packed up, stopped at Home Depot or Lowe's, and got everything you needed for the weekend because there was nothing close to go. So if you forgot something, it was a major disruption to the workday. And I got much better at slowing down a little bit and just thinking about, and quite honestly, as I've gotten older, the projects have gone a whole lot smoother. You know, I'm renovating my own home right now, and you know, there are things that I would have loved to have done the first year that I had the place, and I've paused, and I'm glad I did for a lot of different reasons, right? Realize, well, that's probably not going to work, or that's not going to be as functional as you think it's going to be, or, or what have you. And so, you know, there is a little bit of that. Slow down, think it through.
Yep.
Yes, you're busy, you're in a hurry. And if you don't have the time to really slow down and think it through, then take that Saturday and take the time before you just go and buy the materials. And
watch a little football. Think about it.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Now, it takes longer for me to get projects done now, but that also, I think, comes with, you know, being a little bit older. I don't move as fast as I used to. So.
And I mean, we forget all the time that, like, the fun part was the 7.5 years. Right. And that's the reminder that, you know, we hope to kind of tell this story, too, is that sometimes the fun part is the failures. Sometimes the fun part is the journey that you had where you forgot all the stuff at Home Depot and you didn't have any electricity, or you didn't have this, that, or the other. So you just sat around and did X, Y, or Z, or putzed around and learned some other new skill because you forgot the screws that you were supposed to buy at Home Depot.
All things that happen.
Right. I mean, and that's just the reminder of the failures, and reminder of the mentality of the failures is that is the fun part. The journey is the fun part. The beginning and the end are great, and it's exciting. You decided to build it and you built the home. But that 7.5 years of the stories and the lessons and the time with your kids and the work ethic that then they were imparted upon because they saw it and they were a part of it and they were carrying stuff and helping out, or at least saw that you were gone and understood, you know, what work means, because now they're in the home and they see it and they know what went into building that.
Well, and that was, I mean, I call it a labor of love. I truly do, because to me it was all about, you know, when it would be done and what it would be like to have all the family there, you know, to celebrate. I mean, we've done a few holidays or things like that, or for the kids to someday have kids to go up there and experience what I got to experience as a kid, you know, and they all enjoy coming up and hanging out with their friends and doing that kind of stuff. And you know, I wanted to build it at least big enough that we could have, you know, a couple families there and enjoy it and not be, you know, crowded or anything like that. But that was always in the back of my mind, was how quickly can I get it done so that we can actually enjoy it, you know, and sometimes that worked out well and sometimes it didn't work out in my favor. But
once you have the roof and walls, you can figure it out, right?
Well,
bathroom
it wasn't
on site,
until the
right?
1 year when I showed up and it wasn't all framed in yet, and there was 4 foot of snow on the subfloor, and that was a setback.
Yeah, that's how you knew. I better get these walls up and ceilings up.
Yep.
Well, Sam, I'm thankful to have you here, but I mean, from my perspective, thankful to have you and people like you in this community.
Thank you.
You know, pouring your heart and soul into this community, being there, being active, showing up every single damn day to support what is happening here. The mission not only of the economic development, the nonprofits, but what Huntington stands for in our community, you know, standing up for those small businesses and being alongside these people through these difficult challenges and journeys is really important. So thank you for joining us here today on the podcast. Where can people find you if they want to keep up with Sam? What's the best way to keep up with you? I mean, I assume
it's impossible.
A man of Sam's caliber who's building things with his hands, and you're not screwing around on Facebook and stuff like that.
No,
I mean, how can people stay in touch with Sam?
I'm actually really bad about social media, if I'm being completely honest. I try to be fairly active on LinkedIn.
Okay.
And then if you really want to see me, you know, you can always ring me or email me, and I'm right here in the market. So I sit right in Boardman. But I'm extremely fortunate, you know, to be able to work. You know, you mentioned a lot of things, but none of that's possible without an organization like Huntington that is supportive of all of that, because I can honestly tell you, because I've been other places, and very fortunate to have that behind me, because a lot of the things that I get the opportunity to do is just wouldn't otherwise be possible.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, man.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed this.
Yes.
Thank you so much for listening. This podcast wouldn't be possible without Stonefruit Studios and Bentley Studios. If you'd like to support the podcast, the most impactful thing you can do is subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, and leave a review and/or comment. If you found this episode particularly helpful, we also encourage you to share it with a friend or on social media. Until next time, keep learning, growing, and failing forward.